Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 64 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we are going to take a quick pause on our Preparing for the Hunt series, and in this episode, we are going to do a listener Q&A session, in which we've had lots of great questions sent in. We've been saving some of them so we can try to make a great show out of it, and I think this is just a great opportunity to do so. So with lots of great questions to get into, submitted by you, the listeners, without further ado, here we go. Today's program is proudly sponsored by Krieger Barrels, nearly 40 years of supplying shooters with precision single-point cut rifled match-grade rifle barrels. In addition to the in-stock, ready-to-ship barrels that you can get at KriegerDirect.com, Krieger Barrels offers an online inventory. The online inventory is updated once per week and includes calibers and contours that may not be offered in our Krieger Direct stores. So check out the in-stock page at KriegerBarrels.com if you need a barrel right away, or you can always give their knowledgeable and helpful techs a call to help you with finding exactly what you need. So stop over to KriegerDirect.com or KriegerBarrels.com today. All right, to start this podcast off, we're going to get into a question here submitted by Nick F. Now, Nick had asked two questions. He said, first of all, if you neck size or neck and size a case and let it set for a long period of time, what steps do you recommend to take to get them ready to seat a projectile? So you'll hear me talk about this in the Reloading podcast, and it's one of those things that we deal with here with customers that do reload to call in with getting either crazy standard deviations or flyers, and that is sizing cases and then letting them set for days, weeks, and months, and then going back through and pulling out the sized cases and dumping powder and seating bullets right away. What happens is the neck wants to close or spring back, and it gives really inconsistent neck tension, which causes some problems with accuracy. What I recommend to do if you do that, and what we would do here, is we would simply run them back through full-length sizing die and get them ready to accept the bullet and powder. It is a little bit of a pain in the butt, and it doesn't really do any damage to the brass or work harden. And so all we're going to do is we're going to run them right back through the full-length sizing die, get everything, pressed back into place, back through the expander ball, and then we're ready to go to seat the bullets and have good, consistent neck tension. Another question that he had asked is, he said, if you're on a budget, what wind meter do you recommend? He says he's seen lots of brands out there and a wide variety of prices with little differences. So he wanted to get our opinion on what wind meter to purchase. Again, Nick, great question. I recommend going up through the Kestrels and getting the 5000 series. And this is for a specific reason. As a shooter, there's a couple things that get involved that you want real world and accurate readings on. And that goes to not just the wind speed, which a quality wind meter will do, but also to the barometric pressure, temperature, dew point, humidity. Collectively, we want to get what we call the density altitude. And with Kestrels, you have to go up through their series to get density altitude, and that requires you to purchase the 5000 series. Now, when it comes to wind meters themselves, I tell everybody here at the school, my straight and honest opinion is buy Kestrel. Kestrel is made here in Pennsylvania, which is, great plug for a business here in our state. But also they are really true scientific tools. So these are calibrated and used across the country and even around the world for getting accurate information. These are legitimate scientific tools that give actual weather conditions. Firefighters use them, environmentalists use them for different research and development. So if you're going to buy a wind meter, get one that's a legitimate scientific tool, and we recommend Kestrel. There's a lot of knockoffs you'll see out there. There's also lots of stuff you can buy on there in all the different online purchasing stores, without throwing out any particular names, that have their own branded wind meters. We see them come through the school all the time, and I will tell you they are not right. We can hold them right up beside the Kestrel and sometimes have a several mile an hour difference in the wind, and that means a miss. So in this case, I just straight up tell guys, buy the Kestrel. We sell them here. If you would like to order one through us, Of course, we are a Kestrel dealer, and we can even have it custom engraved and shipped out to you with your name and stuff on it if you would like. But give us a call here or stop over to Kestrel and order it directly from them here in Pennsylvania. And we recommend you get the 5000 series. If you can afford a good wind meter, step up just a little bit more and get the one that allows you to get density altitude. And currently, that's the 5000 series. Now, to follow that up with a unasked question is we do get people that ask about the ballistics programs, both the Ford-off as well as the other programs that Kestrel offers. We teach a way to get dope for a rifle and how to true your dope. And I'm not anti-technology when it comes to having these inside your wind meter, but to be truthful with you, none of that is in any of my wind meters. I want my wind meter to tell me weather conditions, not a ballistics program. And so I don't recommend for new shooters to upgrade and try to get that all put together. It's really not required. If you can afford it and you would like to play with it, great, go ahead. I'm not against it, but I will tell new shooters that save the money, get the wind meter that gives you density altitude, and then learn how to get dope for your rifle and how to get it sort of the old school way or some other programs that you can get. I try not to link it or have it in the wind meter, especially for new shooters. It can be pretty complicated to keep running true. There's a lot more involved in it, and it teaches you to depend on it to give you your dope. And so if you can picture like back in the day, if you remember the old Magic 8 balls where you shook it and asked a question and it magically gave you the answer, the wind meter and other things aren't that. And it teaches you to depend on that product for your dope. When dope isn't something that you get, it's something that you have, data of previous engagements. And now that's something we can talk about for hours and a totally different podcast. And maybe we'll dive into it again someday. But 5000 series Kestrel, and you are good to go. So the next question we have submitted from Kurt F. And Kurt had asked a great question. And this is actually when we get it to school and something that really dives into the fundamentals of marksmanship. And so I thought this was an awesome question to sort of go over here on the podcast. He had said that I find it difficult to place my cheek on the rifle stock cone while wearing muffs or hearing protection like earmuffs. He says he shoots a highly adjustable chassis system, but still finds it difficult to get a good consistent cheek weld. And so he's asking our opinion on earmuffs. So here, and I thought that was such a great question too, because it really does matter. When you're getting into the fundamentals of marksmanship, getting a good consistent cheek weld and cheek pressure is huge for long-range shooting, especially for consistent shooting. So if you want to consistently be able to hit that same spot reliably, cheek weld, cheek pressure is a really big deal. Now, here's the problem with earmuffs, and this is my response that I sent him via email, is that if you are picking your head up or modifying your cheek weld or placement of your face on the stock to compensate for your earmuffs being lifted off your ears while shooting, you have to wear earplugs. The reason being, like myself, some people's ears are too low on their noggin and they can't wear earmuffs because it interferes with their cheek weld on the stock. And so what they'll do is, like his email here, and it was a little bit more lengthy than the sentence or two that I asked, is that he was just constantly struggling. There was no way he could get it adjusted properly to where he felt he had a good, comfortable cheek weld. And the reason was he was compensating for trying to force himself to wear ear muffs. So at the school here, we'll watch, and you'll see people modifying their head position or in an appropriate cheek weld, trying to use their earmuffs. So they're trying to compensate for the fact that they're wearing earmuffs and they can't get on the stock properly. And the results is a really uncomfortable shooter that just can't find that perfect spot for cheek weld and cheek pressure. And so we tell them at school all the time, if you find yourself in that position, get rid of the earmuffs, wear earplugs, whether they're electronic earplugs, which there's a lot of great ones out there now. So if you want to be able to hear and still have hearing protection, or whether it's just a really good quality earplug. Unfortunately, in this scenario, you have to probably just get rid of the earmuffs outside of walking up and down the line and talking to friends. But when you're ready to shoot, you're probably going to have to wear earplugs. So the next question was submitted by Chris, and Chris had asked, he said, "Hi, Jamie." He said, "Can you please do a podcast or at least touch base on the recommended process of cleaning copper and barrel maintenance?" That is a great question, and I think this is a great opportunity in the podcast to talk about it. So we recommend highly the Vortex products. There is a new cleaner out by Bullet Central that we're working with now that seems to work pretty well. and we're testing it for longevity to make sure it's not doing damage to the barrel. So I don't want to throw it out on a podcast yet, but we're always looking for great products that clean well but don't do damage. So to this point, I will recommend it. The 3 products that we really use a lot is the Vortex carbon remover. I'll use it first, and I'll patch some patches through. I might let it set for a little while, and then I do use bronze brushes. Then after I'm done with that, I'll use Vortex Eliminator, which does a really nice job on copper and carbon. And then after that, I'll use Vortex Copper Remover, and that does a really nice job after we break the carbon down to get rid of the copper. All 3 products are safe for your barrel. They won't do damage, and they do take a little bit of time, so I'll go over my cleaning procedure. It takes me on average an hour to clean each school rifle. So consider when we have a class of 4 shooters, it takes me a minimum of 4 hours to clean these rifles. And now that's actual cleaning time. Sometimes I'll let them set and work on other things while it might be setting in my vise, and I'll be letting the carbon cleaner soak a little bit. So those 3 products, the reason I recommend them is they won't damage your barrel. And I always tell customers, specifically when they purchase our rifles, to be really careful on what you put in your barrels. A lot of the ammonia-based and other chemicals out there will actually start to eat or destroy the barrel. And it's hard to imagine that can happen. But we've done lots of testing here, and we can tell you that even over the course of a couple of days of constantly sweeping things out, we can start to see both reduction in weight. So we have little pieces that we'll put in the different chemicals that we'll test, and we'll weigh them, we'll measure them, and we'll see, where we start with ground A, and then we'll let it soak for a day or 2 in the chemical. We'll pull it out, we'll measure it, weigh it, and we're talking small pieces now. We'll look at the surface texture because these are polished pieces, and then you'll be surprised. We'll do this for 2 days. We'll clean out the chemical. We'll put more in. We'll do it for 2 more days. We'll clean it. This might be a process we'll run for 7 to as long as 21 days. And you would be shocked at how much damage is done to these parts. Some of them reduce weight. We're talking measurable weight, not pounds, but we're talking measurable weight. We're talking grains, but measurable weight reduction. And then the surface texture, it starts to etch or eat or deteriorate the surface, if you can almost picture it to slowly turning to 1200 grit, or you just see that the surface is starting to either taint or discolor and then slowly become eaten. And the harsher the chemicals, the more this can happen. So that's why we recommend the Vortex product. So my cleaning process is I'll pass through some of the carbon cleaner. I'll let it set for a little while, then I'll brush it out. I put a bottle over the muzzle, so I'm catching all the splatter that's coming out while I'm cleaning. But I'll do 10 strokes with a bronze brush, and then I'll re-soak the brush, and then I'll do 10 more strokes. And I'll repeat this 5 times for 50 strokes. Every 10 strokes, putting more of the carbon cleaner on the brush before we put it back in. Now, keep in mind, use a good bore guide. You don't want to be damaging your throat or bouncing things around, and use a good cleaning rod, carbon fiber or otherwise, coated. Not anything with sharp edges, no stainless steel rods with joints in them, anything like that. Then after I'm done that, I'll patch that all out. I might run a couple patches of either oil or rubbing alcohol or isopropyl, pharmaceutical grade, 90%. And then I'll start with the Vortex Eliminator. Again, I'll put some wet patches through, sort of let it start working. And then I'll do the 10 strokes 5 times with more chemical on the brush after every 10 strokes. I'll patch all that out. Again, running some isopropyl or oil through the barrel to try to get remnants of that cleaner out. And then I'll start into the copper remover. And you will go through some brushes. We go through probably 1 brush every time we clean a barrel. We don't worry about saving them. They start to deteriorate rather quickly, especially with the copper remover. And so we just toss them in the garbage and get a new one. It's the price you pay for cleaning your barrel. And keep in mind, we don't clean our barrels for several hundred rounds, and so they take a little bit more effort to clean. If the barrel is really fouled out, or if I get in there with a bore scope and I still have a lot of carbon or copper in the throat area, we will use JB bore paste ever so slightly. And we'll put a little bit on a patch, read their instructions, and we'll just work it back and forth with a nice tight-fitting patch right there in the throat. You'll see it'll turn black. Patch that out, put another one in, and you can sort of micro-clean an area to get that out. And it really doesn't do any damage as well. or it doesn't have any long-lasting chemical erosion of the barrel itself. So that's sort of the process that we'll go through. I will touch base on the stuff we're getting from Bullet Central, and I'll let you know how it's working now. But as at this point, that's all we use. And then once we're finished, we make sure that we get in with a good chamber mop. We clean all the garbage out of the chamber. We clean inside the action, including where the lugs lock up on the bolt. So we get in there and we wipe all that area out, make sure there's no chemicals and dirt and debris, dust, get all of that out there from the days of shooting in the field. Wipe the entire inside of the action out. Then patch out the barrel, multiple patches of oil, multiple more patches, clean the crown, make sure she's nice and dry. Final process is we'll wipe out the action and the bolt body, bolt face, all of that. I might, on the bolt body itself and on the bolt face, I will use Hoppy's number 9 a little bit just to get any stuck on carbon, or you'll see brass and bits and pieces into the bolt face. I wipe all that out. I use a Q-tip if I have to. I get in there and clean all that out real nice. Then I wipe the action inside and the bolt body and face itself down with rubbing alcohol. After I'm done with the rubbing alcohol, I'll use a product called Milcom. It's a grease, and I'll dab it inside the action in different spots. I'll put it on the bolt, the back of the lugs, the bolt body, the camming positions for the firing pin, as well as where the bolt cams on the action. And then I'll take with a set of gloves on, I'll work it around inside the action, and so you'll have a nice little film. And I'm not worried about it being gooped too much. I mean, I don't pile it in there, but I definitely want it on all the surfaces. And then I'll wipe the entire bolt body down, making sure it's got a nice film on it. Same with the back of the lugs and the bolt face. Then I'll stick the bolt in the gun, work it back and forth, getting all that nice and lubed up. And then with Milcom, the cool thing is if you clean the action properly, you can sort of wipe everything dry. Take a piece of cotton, t-shirt, wipe inside the action out really well, wipe the bolt body down, and what you'll see is it'll turn almost like a waxy color. Like if you just wax the car, it'll have like a little dull to it. And the reason we use this stuff is you can put the bolt back in after you've wiped all this out, and it runs like it's on ball bearings, but there's no wet. So it still has lubrication on it and in the action, but it's not wet, so you're not going to get dirt and debris sort of sticking to it, and that's why we use Milcom. So follow Milcom's instructions. They do a great job of detailing how you should pre-clean the parts before you apply it. But done properly, it works really well in the field, and it'll keep the bolt running really slick and help prevent the dirt and debris sticking to it so fast. So great question, Chris. Hope the answer helps you out there a little bit, and thank you for taking the time to send it in. I do appreciate it. So the next question is from Matthew M. And he had asked, he said, what are your thoughts on the Vortex scopes and also the Macmillan A4 stock? He says, I do not recall the podcast ever addressing that particular stock, and I also wanted to know about your experiences on both. Well, the A4 stock, I will tell you, is a fantastic stock. If you go and look up the history, just Google it, you'll see that the Marine Corps used it for their sniper rifles for a while. It is a great field stock. Aluminum pillars, they glass bedded them. Fully adjustable, really took the sniper stocks into the next generation, and now you have the A5 and the A6 and the A10s and all the other stocks that have followed. But the A4 is very much a traditional sniper stock. I'm not sure if anybody still uses it today or where it's still put into service, but that's sort of the history on it, and there's lots of good reads and research. And there's several friends that I shoot with that actually served shooting those and still shoot them today, and I absolutely love the stock. So I personally have never shot one in a match myself. I've built on them before. I've shot them before. Great stock, great history. And I think if you find that stock fits you well, your hand, and it's just one of the stocks that's sort of near and dear to you, you should run with it. He had also asked about my thoughts on the Vortex scope. And I try to be very clear, and we're going to have another question that was asked by another customer here in just a minute, but I do not use or shoot Vortex optics. And it's, for us, I try not to bash other companies and say negative things because I'm sure they all have their pros and cons. But for me, the scopes are where the rubber meets the road. It's like having a great set of tires on your race car, right? And if you want to talk about one area that leaves you vulnerable to having all kinds of issues, it's the scope. So I really recommend Collis. That's our number one scope. It's what we use here at the school. Any of their lines, I really like Leopold. I think they are so, back in the day they were the scope, and now because they're in that $1,000 to $2,000 price range, they're sort of looked down on. Well, they're not a $3,000 or $4,000 scope, so they can't be. I'm going to disagree with that. The Mark Vs, I think, are a fantastic scope for the money. Whether it's the 3 to 18, the 5 to 25, we use them. We have customers that use them. We have instructors that use both, and just a fantastic scope. So the two that we recommend is the Collis and Leupold Mark V, but then you also have some other scopes, which we just can't say that, hey, don't shoot these, right? You've got Schmidt and Bender. Really hard to beat a Schmidt and Bender great scope. You've got Swarovski, which is the parent company of now Collis. And Swarovski makes fantastic pieces of equipment. It's just that they're not first focal plane. They don't offer mills. For us as shooters, it's sort of like having the training wheels put back on our gun, to not have that as an option. And so, it's one of the reasons why we don't sell the Swarovski brand, is simply that. But as far as the Vortex scopes go, anything made in China, a lot of the stuff made in Philippines, anything, even in Japan, there's a lot of branded scopes that are coming out of a particular factory or a couple named factories. And, it's not the same as people building them themselves. I know that they say that they're built to their standards and their specs, and they have great advertising and great marketing skills. Obviously, they're a huge brand. We spoke with a gentleman that came into our shooting school from Cabela's, and he said, 8 years ago, nobody looked at some of these scopes, and now he said everybody runs right to them. It's just one of their best-selling brands, and that's just really great marketing and advertising, and probably a pretty sound product, but it's just not on par for what we would be looking for here. So the next question here is submitted by Michael J., and it goes back to the optics, and he had said that I'm somewhat dismayed at your belief that it is not your place to give an honest review of scopes that a manufacturer had sent you specifically for evaluation. And he'd also said that it was our place to actually call them out, whether they were good or bad. And then also the reality is that some folks only naming companies when praising products may be part of the cause of the problem, allowing subpar products to be successfully marketed and sold as precision gear at precision gear prices. So he said that, he goes on, he says, not naming the companies is also hurting other manufacturers who might be listening and incorrectly group one of the other companies in a category. And I can get that. So, what he's saying is that maybe they're mistaking somebody else for who we're talking about. And so he's always said that I've always heard that Vortex is the exception to the general rule about avoiding China, but now I'm questioning that. So it's a great question. It was sent in by Michael J., and I hope that reads okay on the podcast. What I'm going to say about that, I don't know where Vortex is made. I don't know if they're in China. I don't know if they're in Japan or the Philippines. And there are other scopes that are made in those same facilities that are branded by other companies. And they all have their engineers working to make sure that they hold to their quality. However, though, when you're subcontracting parts out and just having stuff branded, for me personally, I don't see you as being in the scope manufacturing business. I see you in the scope selling business. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, it creates products, it has lots of people involved, and of course, it keeps lots of people employed. But I'm really careful because I don't want to say anything on the podcast that lives forever and then turns out to be either changed, so they brought manufacturing in-house and start making just world-class stuff. Of course, we would throw it out there if we picked it up and started carrying it. But I don't want to say something and then that stick. That's sort of the problem, is you've got the sticky factor involved in it. And I'm also one to say that, we're all human and we've all made mistakes as far as introducing a new line maybe before it was ready, or, changing course or direction with a business. Just rethinking about, hey, we don't want to go this way. We're going to go a totally different direction. And then, you have the consequences to deal with that. And so I understand business and how it works, and it's a very competitive marketplace. And so a lot of that will often dictate not just directions that people will go, but pricing, and then the pressure. They have the pressure of trying to compete at this level in markets where money matters as well. And, sometimes their advertising budgets might be 50% of their markup. I mean, I don't know, but I'm just saying, they know what they have to do to keep the products moving, and it becomes a well-oiled machine. But for me as a shooter, here's how I like to look at it. You've taken the time to build a great quality rifle, or you're shooting a great quality rifle, one that you really like a lot. And, it's like taking and putting $99 tires on your race car and taking it to Nuremberg or taking it to the racetrack in Germany. You're probably going to die in one of the turns. You know you're putting a less than perfect or subpar product. You know that. And the reason I'm really passionate about this subject, and hopefully this comes off correctly, is because I have watched hundreds of people leave the shooting school with not being able to run their rifles to finish it because of problems with their optics. Most of the problems that we have here at the school with customer brought rifles isn't the rifle. It's usually something with the optics either not tracking, not zeroing, not returning to zero, or just flat out failing, locking up tighter than a drum. And whether you spend $1 on this product or $3,000 on this product, it doesn't matter if it stops working when you need it. And so I sort of look at it as, what is the percentile of failure? What is the chances of these things having problems and giving me an issue? And what I am looking for when I look at optics or scopes to put on a rifle that I truly care about, so we're not talking about your 22 for shooting squirrels, which, by the way, I shoot a Vari X2 Leupold on my squirrel gun that's suppressed, and it's 1970s technology, but it tracks and works great, right? Brass gearing, all that good stuff. So it's not always a price thing, but when I am building a rifle that is my rifle or the rifle, I want a scope that has a reputation that is beyond perfect, that has taken the time to make sure that tracking is 100% reliable, that the gearing is so well thought out that they want it to work perfect every day for decades, that independent testing over and over and over again has showed that their failure rate is super low compared to the standard across the industry. Nobody makes a perfect product, and there's always that chance of getting something that has an unforeseen issue of some kind. That just caught them off guard. But that said, the reason I stick with a known entity is that I really believe that putting these things through their test, I am looking for that ultimate reliability and as close to perfect as I can get, because unfortunately it's one part that's moving on the gun a lot. And that's the other problem is that we're dialing these rifles up and down constantly. I mean, I do it in the classic. I'll reach up and grab a scope, and I'll just start turning the knob left and right, left and right, left and right. And I'll do this for 3 or 4 minutes in front of a student. I'm saying, hey, if I walked up to you at the range and this was your rifle and your scope, and I reached down and I started doing that to your knobs while I'm talking to you, just turning them left and right, like how long could you handle that before you almost lose your mind? And the answers from the students like, oh my God, I'd be mad already, But I remind them that we do that in the first 2 hours of the day. That's how important that part is. And so that's why we stay with Leupold, and that's why we stay with the Mark Vs and the Collis. And, there are other scopes, like I said before, Schmidt and Bender, and that are just super quality scopes for sure. And there's new ones coming out all the time. But what we look for is track record. Not what they're saying, but what the results have been over long periods of time, and then we consider it from there. So going back to not naming names, I always find it's best in this scenario to name what we actually like to use with no self-serving. I am not paid by these guys. Yes, we sell them, but we sell them by choice. We use them before we ask to sell them because we believe in the product. And to be honest with you, I only sell the products I believe in, and that's 100% across the board. We don't sell anything here to our customers that we don't personally use, and that's sort of the standard that we set. And if I won't use any of these other optics, then I obviously won't sell them to my customer because I just don't believe in them. I just don't think they're at that level of what we are looking for to put on our guns here. And so I try not to name names. I try to say, okay, here's what we like, and I think that's a good way to go. And it does 2 or 3 things. It's not bashing other people's products because they're doing a great job, obviously, and not everybody's having problems with them. It's just we're trying to keep that to a minimum. I think that's sort of our goal here. But that said, I really do appreciate you taking the time to ask the question, and I do understand you wanting to know or to name names, and I hope that answers it the best way that I can to be fair as a business owner to another business owner and say it's not so much about who we won't use, it's just we would like to share who we do use and why. All right, so this is a great time to stop and just say thank you to TriggerTech. TriggerTech is a sponsor of the show, and we certainly appreciate having them here. I will tell you that if you're going to shoot better or if you want to shoot better, put a better trigger in your rifle. And if you're going to go through all that hassle, use the best that we think there is out there and purchase a TriggerTech. So TriggerTech makes fantastic shooting triggers that have really simple operations and setup. One screw to adjust the pull weight. They are safe. They are self-cleaning, and they are reliable. It's what we use in all of our guns here, and they now have the 2-stage. So they make lots of different triggers for other models. We use Remington 700 clones here, of course, but if you're going to buy a good trigger, we really highly recommend looking at TriggerTech triggers. So if you want to see all they have available, including the new 2-stage trigger, stop over to triggertech.com. That is triggertech.com today. We'd also like to take time to say thank you to MDT Chassis. MDT Chassis is a sponsor of the show here as well, and we certainly appreciate and thank their support for the show. We like to look at chassis as what's next and up and coming. They offer a full line of chassis from the Oryx, which is one of our favorite entry-level chassis, right up to the ACC, different competition levels, and lots of accessories, adjustments, and personalization to them as well. So if you really want to get a good stock or aftermarket stock for your rifle, which is what we really recommend to do, you get a great shooting rifle with a factory stock that just doesn't fit you right, we recommend right out of the gate that you replace the stock and get something that you can adjust to your particular build and size. And if you're going to go through all that, take a look at MDT. So stop over to mdttac.com today and see what they have to offer. All right, another great question sent in by Lee D. from San Antonio, Texas. And Lee had asked the conversation, age-old, minutes, or mils. So Lee had said he's a little bit older, and that it seems like a lot of the younger guys always want to switch over to mils, and the older friends are sort of stuck on minutes, and what's my opinion on that? So plain and simple, if you're going to go to France, learn to speak French. 2 things. If you're going to shoot competition, or you think you're going to get into shooting competition, switch over to mils. I personally think that they are cleaner, simpler, and easier to use, especially when you get into techniques like hold over and hold off. We do it here at the school. All of our school rifles are in mil rating for that reason, and it's just amazing. Even the guys that shot mils their whole lives, at the end of the class, will instantly switch over and change everything to mils. That said, though, if you're going to get into the competition shooting, what's nice is if you switch over to mils, that's the corrections you're going to be hearing a lot of. They don't make a lot of spotting scopes with minute reticles, and not a lot of people are really good at taking mils and turning them into minutes to get you a correction for your rifle in the middle of a match. And so you either have to know how to self-spot or translate mils to minutes quickly, but I recommend highly, highly, highly getting a first focal plane scope right out of the gate. Make sure it's first focal plane, but then going mils, just simply because as you're there and shooting and enjoying the match, as people are calling out corrections in mils, you're going to understand what it is and you're going to be able to use what they're telling you. So you can speak their language, and I think that's the most important part of that as well. So absolutely go mils. I would recommend it 100%. And we believe in it so much, all of our school rifles here in mils, and over the years of teaching the class, I will tell you that most 99.5% of our students that come with minutes leave shooting mils, and we've never had anyone email us about going back. All right, so another question from Matthew C., and Matthew is in Calistoga, California, and he had asked, he really appreciates the information and insight, but could you give us some thoughts on shooting supports in the field? That is a great question, actually, and I think it deserves a little bit of time to talk about. So I have a general rule that I sort of live by when you get into this type of shooting is never stand when you can kneel, never kneel when you can set, never set when you can go prone. Always look and shoot from the most stable firing position. So what I'm saying here is anything that you can use to help you in the field, whether it's shooting off of your backpack, like you were talking about in your email. If you need more height, have your friend wear the backpack and lay in front of you and shoot off of it. We've done that in matches. Safety first. Now, I'm not telling you to throw anybody out in front of you and with a muzzle brake on and, they don't have hearing protection. You decide to crack a round off their backpack. Not going to go well. But I'm telling you that we have used this stuff in the field before. Incompetent hands, it's a very safe thing to do. Shoot off of people's shoulders, off the nook of a tree. We even teach techniques to shoot off of shooting sticks and tripods, and usually just like the little tightening down straps that you can see have a little plastic loop on one end that you can take a little nylon half-inch wide strap and wrap through and sort of snug something down on a backpack, where we can loop one of those around a tree and then loop another one through there, make the loop itself with the second one, slide your rifle through and tighten it right up against the edge of a tree. There's just so many ways you can be ingenious on trying to take and look for the most stable position. And then what I recommend is practice them. Your hit percentages are going to go down as soon as you start moving up off the ground to less than stellar positions. And so using everything in your power, like if you're shooting off a setting bipod, put your backpack underneath the rear of the rifle to sort of give you something to set it on. If you can, use your tripod. I know you'll see this in PRS matches, and I think it's just an ingenious thing to do is, have your rifle off the nook of the tree, but then swing your tripod that your spotting scope is on and set your rifle on the tripod on one of the legs, the buttstock, and pinch it just like you would a rear bag, and you'd be surprised on how much more stable the shot is. Because in this scenario, whether it's in a match or in a hunting scenario, if you don't use every resource available to get the most steady position that you can, then you're going to have a less than stellar shot. So anything you can do that you can get a more stable firing position or a more stable position to shoot from, the more higher percentage rate of hits you're going to have. And that's what it's about. And so kudos to the guys in the fields that just think for just a minute or two, and rather than just kneeling and putting their elbow on their top or their knee and shooting in the kneeling position, throw their backpack out in front of them, have their buddy set behind them so they can lean against their buddy backwards, have their buddy set with their backpack on facing the opposite direction so you can lean back on your friend, tell him to hold his breath. And just so much you can do. We do teach in a level 3 class once in a while after you've been through our school. We call them open range days, where we sort of teach and go over some of these different things and tricks. They'll let you practice them with your rifle. But great question, and yes, everything and anything that you can use to get a more stable position is the way to go. So the last question of the day we're going to take in this podcast is someone had asked about the McCubed stock, or the MC3. And so Macmillan has a line of lesser expensive stocks that they had launched, and he was asking our opinion on the stock itself. Well, I did some research. I have not had any here, so I can be honest and say that I've not put my hands on them, and really no intentions on bringing them in and running them through for any reason. There's a couple of things that fall short, and I really pay attention to this with stocks, is in any type of stock like this, I try to have aluminum pillars installed. That helps keep any crush going and where the action sets. And then also you've got to bed the rifle. And I'm trying to look for something that's very stable, that doesn't flex. So me personally, stock-wise, I think the best stock for a budget type stock would be like the Oryx, which is made by MDT. It retails for $395. We've actually built hunting rifles on these, multiple hunting rifles last year. And we've not had a customer contact us and say it just wasn't a great stock. So it's very solid. It doesn't flex and bow in the forearm. It's almost bulletproof in the fact that you could throw the stock down and step on it. It's not going to hurt anything. It's solid aluminum chassis from front to rear. It may be a pound or so heavier than your traditional hunting style stock. But that said, what are my thoughts on those type of stocks? And you get into that price point is, I would say you almost have to buy it and try it. Make sure you can get it to where it's adjustable. Know that it's going to have its limits on just how much it flexes. It might be a great stock. It really might be. I don't want to undersell it. I've never shot one. But when you get into that price point, the flexing becomes a bigger issue than anything. We just don't want the forearm as we're loading a bipod to flex. If you can think of like it's preloading, and then when the gun cracks, it actually gives you a little bit extra kick up. So that's part of it. The other thing is having it bedded. Whether it's a chassis or Macmillan A3 or the MC3, we really recommend bedding these stocks. The reason being is you want a footprint to lock that action into that stock perfectly, contacting everywhere it's supposed to in the appropriate way in a mirrored image of the action. And so you just get this lockup like you can never have without it. And so if you do decide to go with one of these, that's probably one of the things I would recommend to do. If you like the stock and it's lightweight and you think it's a fieldable stock and, its application fits your situation really well, go for it. But really recommend having it professionally bedded and see if there's any way that you can stiffen it up if it does flex a lot. So as a hunting rifle or here in our Pennsylvania woods where we might shoot 150, 200 yards, it's really not going to make that much of a difference if it flexes a little bit. If you're going out west and you think you might be shooting 800, 1,000 or more on varmints, or it's a big game hunt where the shot could be, in excess of 500, 600 yards, then that starts to play a little bit into my decision-making process because stability becomes a big thing. I don't want anything that flexes and moves a lot. So I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to tune into the podcast. We had archived lots of great questions, and all of these great questions are awesome. For those that submitted the questions and heard it on the podcast, please contact me, send me out an email, and let me know if you would like a t-shirt or a hat as our way of saying thanks for sending a great load of questions to us. We always appreciate that. For some updates, we did finish our long-range shooting schools for the year. We had 3 classes back-to-back. Some of the best shooting classes that we've ever had. Weather was absolutely beautiful, and it is always awesome to spend 3 days on the firing line with just a great group of passionate shooters. I will say that we are in the middle, so we put a new building up on our main firing line. So we have 5 shooting positions inside, and we roll the doors up, and we actually taught the classes there at the firing line, as well as when it was time to shoot, rolled the doors up, folded up the tables, and we were able to do our shooting. So our new building will be up and running for our actual building for our business here in a couple weeks. We'll have our grand opening coming soon. And then our shoot house is going to be insulated, heated, so we can teach classes in the winter. That is right. So starting in January, we are going to hold winter shoot classes. Now, these are only going to be 2-day classes, but we're going to teach the main shooting school at our new facility, and we're going to go to the range, to our insulated shoot house, get her warmed up, crack the doors open, and actually get to spend some time on the range in the winter. So we announced our first classes will be in January. We're going to wait till after all of the deer season hunting is over. And so we have 2 classes we just announced for January. They're going to be our 2-day winter classes. If you'd like to sign up and register, you can register at wolfprecision.net. Love to have you. Also, just to touch base on the shooting schools for next year, we are sticking with the format of limiting to 4 students per class. I know it's sort of anti-productive as far as being able to get a lot of students through the school, but I will tell you for this year, it's been one of the best years ever. The time that we get to spend with everybody, the feedback from the clients on the one-on-one relationships and being able to spend one-on-one time with everybody, and the fact that I enjoyed every single class to the max. I mean, you got to know everybody's name. You got to spend time, what you do, and really got a chance to know everybody. And I thought it was just a great, great thing to not just enjoy and share the art of long-range shooting, but actually get a chance to get to know the people that are coming through and why they're coming through and what they're going after. And it was just great. So next year, this is carved in stone. We are only allowing 4 students per class, and I think that's important. It sets us apart from everybody else out there. It's just pounding people through and mass chaos and having 10 to 12 people in a class. Those days are gone for us. So if you'd like to come through and learn the art of long-range shooting, we'd love to have you. And if you come through, you're going to enjoy some really personal one-on-one time. I think that's very important. 2 more things to wrap up here before we go. Number 1, don't forget to register on Facebook. We are giving away a Bat Igniter Action, Krieger Barrel Ace, and the opportunity to come in and build with us. So go over to our Facebook page. It's Wolf Precision Inc. Tag 3 people, comment in the section below, tag 3 people, and share the post, and you are in the running. So October 31st, we are going to be giving away our biggest giveaway ever. And then we're also going to give you the chance to come in and build a rifle with us under our supervision in our new shop. So stop over to Facebook. Make sure you get registered for that as well. And as I just said, the new Igniter Action. We are 2 weeks away from this new action that is going to just shake the entire industry. The reason I say that, it is a bat action. It is a top shelf, high quality action. We've been working on this particular product for quite a while. We're going to have some video reviews coming out. Our first action will be in hand in about 2 weeks that we'll have for sale. We've already taken several orders for rifles using them, but we were able to make the action a little bit stiffer. So if you can picture the top of the action where the rail attaches, we've left more steel in there, as well as when you attach your 20 MOA aluminum rail, it is no longer cut out in the middle like a traditional Type 700. It is straight and flat as well. All of it adding to rigidity, built-in integral recoil lug, the same bolt face, same interchangeable bolt faces that's in all of our actions. And so what we're able to do is with working with Bruce and Daryl and those guys at Bat Machine, we've been working on this product, like I said, probably for quite a while, 2 years in the making maybe, and then 1 year in the last year really trying to get it honed into where we want it to be. So world-class action that now allows most of our rifles to have starting prices of under $4,000. And so our goal is always to give the very best product in the market. We think we found that with the Ace, but then also to always, always, always give it to the customer at the very best price that we can. Everybody works very hard for the money, and we want to make sure that not only can we give you a better product than you can buy anywhere, regardless of the price, but then also double down on that and saying that, our responsibility to our customers is to always make sure that we are providing them with the best price that we can. So we're really excited that almost all of our rifles now have a starting price of under $4,000 with a Bat Action Krieger barrel, brand new Ace. And, the thing with the Ace here, and just to touch base with it just a minute, it's about eliminating waste, and it's about eliminating a process that no longer needs to even exist. When you take traditional gunsmithing, for example, you're using 1800s and early 1900s technology of manually drilling and reaming a barrel. And there's several problems with that. Number one, the curvature of the bore. You can't get rid of it. The other problem with that is just an absolute waste of excessive, shop time, manpower. You're limited by the quality or the ability of the gunsmith to actually chamber it properly, inconsistency from barrel to barrel and how the guy's feeling for the day. And so in our minds, the Ace not only allows us to do a better job at making a barrel and throating it, allows us to make a perfect chamber without human intervention, no one-offs, and then assemble it afterwards. But the big thing is we are getting rid of needless hours and hours and hours of manual labor that is part of the problem. And so one of the reasons we're able to do the pricing that we can is that our system is about just quality and efficiency on how we build and changing the entire backdrop of how rifles are actually made in this modern world that we live in. And so we're really excited with that because part of that is we were able to pass on the savings of not to needlessly have 3 or 4 people standing in a lathe manually dialing in and being limited by what they're capable of doing on the product that we're putting out, as well as having to add that unnecessary cost back into the cost of our rifle. So that's a really big deal as well. So you get a chance. We're looking forward to have you come over to our new shop. We will be announcing our grand opening is November 1st, and we have our first customer scheduled to come in and do their builds with us starting in November 5th. So again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us here at the podcast. I really appreciate it. We'll have a YouTube video coming up as soon as we get our Igniter actions in hand that will be commercially available. Go over some of the details and how that action is really going to make a big dent in the industry. So we're excited about that. But thanks for taking the time for joining us. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.